So for our Dublin Core project, we chose to look at the news site, The Verge. We chose a news site because Dublin Core works pretty well with web resources, and we found that the classic DC element set gave us a really good baseline from which we could then kind of build our own application profile. So The Verge has a fairly standard template for their news media, which you can kind of see here. It's very standard throughout. A lot of the articles look exactly like this, with much of the same information. So we thought it would be a great first test case to try out. So The Verge is part of Vox Media, which also includes Polygon, which covers gaming, and SB Nation, which covers sports. And as we were kind of thinking about how we were going to kind of figure out what elements we needed, we realized that SB Nation and Polygon are structured very similarly to The Verge, which you can kind of see reflected in, the design, the navigation, kind of the different types of media that they're employing. So we kind of thought, in the future, this would be really easy to kind of extend our application profile to cover both Polygon and SB Nation, as well as The Verge. So you've got an entire kind of media standard for Vox Media instead of just, one schema for The Verge. But as we were kind of designing our schema and discussing the elements, we also discussed user needs. So who is the audience for The Verge? What are they looking for? How are they going to access it? It's likely that The Verge attracts a pretty diverse reader base, but mostly people who are interested in up-to-date news about technology, science, cultural issues, kind of everything in that world. So pretty tech-friendly audience. And we realized in things such as Twitter handles and tags, as well as products, product information, products mentioned in posts, would be really important to our end users. So I'll give you kind of just a brief look at kind of what I'm talking about here. So this is just a basic article on an HTC tablet. You can see up here in the byline, it not only has kind of name, date, time, email, which is already in DC, but it also includes a Twitter handle. Not every article includes the author's Twitter handles, but a lot do, and this would be really important to include, especially if you were already following this person on Twitter or you really liked what they were talking about and kind of the fields that they covered, so then you could go and find them on Twitter as well. In addition to that, if you scroll down to the bottom here, you also see kind of source, related items, but what I thought was really interesting was they also include, products that are mentioned within this article. So this can be a great way to connect articles based on kind of what type of products they're talking about. If you're looking for, a great overview of all tablets, you could easily find that through the product metadata. You could also find reviews, user comments. So these are just some ways that we were kind of thinking about how users would actually access information from our schema. And with that, I will pass it off to talk about our schema.
With that information about our user base in mind, we're next going to explore how we create an application profile to fit the data, its use, and our users, starting with a discussion on Dublin Core. Remember, our goal is to create a schema that allowed us to convey important descriptive information while still being streamlined enough to allow quick application, keeping up with the pace of blog entries. In our discussion of Dublin Core, we'll cover three main areas. First, the Dublin Core items we chose to include or exclude from our application profile. Second, which terms were altered, and third, the different ways we expect our schema users will react to optional elements and how we're using these elements to facilitate data sharing. After these three topics, Laura will be introducing our local terms and how everything fit together for the profile. We've chosen to indicate these 10 Dublin Core elements as those most applicable to our application profile. While we considered including some others, such as language, we ultimately felt that those would come at the expense of time spent creating values for the other elements more accurately. Instead, the elements we are using in our schema provide the information needed to locate the article, identify its content, and trace its influences, which are all crucial components in seeing relationships and locating unique information in web-based content. You'll notice on this slide that there is a star next to subject. For this element, we kept the name but altered the enumerations of the schema attribute to use the Verge's own subject categorization. If this schema were expanded to include the other Vox sites mentioned earlier, that taxonomy would be useful in placing Verge posts in the context of other Vox content. With these terms, we've chosen in some situations to adjust the default elements. For a few terms, this has meant allowing unbounded repetitions. We consider that creator refers to the post author, and so it is appropriate to allow multiple authors. For the subject element, since subject refers to the Verge's own subject taxonomy, The number of subjects is determined by those included on the website. The source field is also self-identified with the Verge's Via section that is placed below some posts. It's generally a web source and is the main influence on the content that the article contains. Sources can include other news sites, company announcements, and official public documents. This is an important field for credit attribution in an online environment and will also allow users who receive the data to find valuable information, such as which sites the Verge uses most often to locate content in different subject areas. In the publisher element, we have used Dublin Core terminology, but have fixed the value to always be the Verge, saving time for our schema users, but ensuring that this content is associated properly as it is divided and reused elsewhere. There are two categories of optional elements. One category is those that may or may not occur for Verge posts. The other is elements we do not intend our users to enter value for, but that happen to be children or siblings of elements with system use. Following best practices identified on the class discussion board, we have chosen to make those elements optional and will rely on instructions to users to avoid complicating their creation of instances by attempting to locate content for these fields. We'll focus first on elements that may be variably included. This includes source, since articles such as reviews or opinion pieces may contain completely original content. It also includes the relation element and two of its children, references and is referenced by. These are controlled by the links contained in and directing to the post, so if those links are not present, these elements may or may not be necessary. However, many articles do contain a large number of links or might be linked to in multiple other posts, and so the two child elements are also unbounded. The second category of optional elements is those we do not expect users to need, but have included for the sake of their sibling or parent elements as explained earlier. However, users are always innovators, and it may turn out that eventually these will help morph our application profile into something that grows with site changes. There are two sets in this category we particularly want to explain. The first is the children of relation. We discussed references and is referenced by on the last slide. The other children, however, might turn out to be useful in the future if the website changes its style over time. If posts are ever entered in separate video and text formats, or in both the Verge's long form and short form extents, it may be appropriate to use has format and is format of. The second set is for the children of date. While we initially considered including the elements date submitted and date accepted, we intend the schema to be used primarily for outside sharing and display rather than internal record keeping, making this field less useful and preventing internal data from being exposed to news aggregators or readers. So the date created and optionally date modified fields are the only expected ones here. From here, we conclude our look at how Dublin Core elements are used in our schema, and we'll move on to the creation and use of our own local terms.
Thanks, Michelle. During this section of the video, I will briefly go over some of the local terms we decided to include within our application profile, including contact, publisher, section, tags, and material goods. The first local term is contact. As Dana mentioned earlier, articles on The Verge include contact information for the creator of the content. So, for example, this article for the Surface Pro 2 includes creator Tom Warren's email address and Twitter handle. When we built this term into the local terms of our application profile, we set the occurrences from 1 to unbounded so that each record is required to have at least one method of contact. Though there are many different social media platforms on the internet, we chose Twitter, Facebook, email, and Google Plus for our enumerations. We based this off of the articles we looked at for this project, with mainly included email and Twitter as their contact information. However, we also considered the different social media channels that The Verge is active on, which also includes Facebook and Google Plus. Our next local term is related to publisher. Publisher is the term included in Dublin Core. However, because all the articles on The Verge are published by The Verge, we decided to include this as an enumeration, just to make it easier for the people assigning metadata to content. As discussed earlier, in the event that this application profile is extended onto other news channels on Vox Media, including the Polygon and SB Nation, this term can be updated to reflect this new publication environment. For section, we created enumerations to match the different sections on The Verge. Content is divided into long form, video, reviews, tech, science, culture, design, business, and US and world. This is set up so that each content record fits into one section. Before we made this decision, we looked to see how content was organized on The Verge currently. For example, if a video reviewing a tablet is under the section Video, wouldn't it also be under Reviews? It turns out that The Verge currently buckets its videos into the Video section. Some videos are referenced in other sections, however, this is only within the context of another article. So, for example, this video reviewing the Surface 2 is included in the Video section. However, it is also embedded within a written article review of the Surface 2 in the Reviews section. Because of this, we decided to keep our section occurrences to one in our bounds. Our next local term deals with tags. We included tags in our local terms to allow for additional metadata to describe the content within articles or videos on The Verge. The occurrences are from 0 to unbounded, which allows The Verge to add as many tags as needed to help users find the article that they need. We didn't utilize a controlled vocabulary through enumerations with tags. This gives content editors at The Verge the ability to tag articles with terms that closely fit with the language used by their readers, especially related to current events or technology, both arenas that incur rapid change. Our final local term is material goods. We included material goods in our local terms to address the product metadata data mentioned earlier in the introduction. This term is from 0 to unbounded because articles may include no products, or an article could mention multiple products. For example, this article references 2 HTC tablets, the Jetstream, and the Flyer. Including this metadata aids readers who may be interested in learning more about a product after reading the article. Similar to tags, we didn't include a controlled vocabulary for material goods because due to the rapid product releases in tech, it would be difficult to keep up to date. This concludes Group 5's presentation on the Dublin Core application profile for the technology website The Verge. Thank you for listening.